Hey, my name is Cassandra Solano. I am a relationship coach. I have been working as a clinician for 17 years, and I'm going to talk today about childhood emotional neglect and how that impacts you. So please say hello if you are joining. We're going to talk today about CEN, or childhood emotional neglect. So many of my clients come to work with me feeling like they had, a decent childhood. Maybe their parents had to work a lot, or they went through a divorce. Their parents struggled financially, but they really, come to me with the mindset of, overall things weren't that bad. My childhood could have been worse. So I don't know why my nervous system feels dysregulated. I don't know why I'm struggling with commitment in relationships. I don't know why I keep attracting emotionally unavailable people or sabotaging myself, because I had this okay childhood. And I want to talk today about childhood emotional neglect, because even if you didn't experience a more overt experience of abuse, physical abuse, etc., emotional neglect still impacted the way that your brain develops, and it still impacted your nervous system. And we're going to unpack that a little bit today. So hello, if you are joining, please let me know where you are joining from. I'd love to say hi, and let me know if you can hear me okay. I've got my earphones plugged in because I've got my air conditioning on in here, and it can be a little bit loud. So if you can give me a thumbs up or some hearts and let me know if you can hear me okay, that would be super. Okay, so emotional neglect still impacts our brains and our nervous systems like physical abuse and neglect. Sometimes when we think about emotional neglect, we think about more overt emotional abuse. We think about getting yelled at. We think about being shamed. We think about being criticized. We think about being made fun of. And that is certainly true. That is absolutely a form of abuse. And our brains and our nervous systems as children, when we're developing, don't know the difference between physical abuse, like being spanked, and then emotional abuse, being yelled at. The nervous system still is reading and perceiving the threat as as potentially traumatic, and your body is still responding with the same response, whether you're being physically abused or verbally yelled at or demeaned or made fun of or harmed. Your nervous system is still going to go through the same threat response. It's going to still release a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol in your system. Your fight or flight or freeze or shutdown response is going to kick in just the same as if you were actually being physically harmed. And we can develop the same kind of trauma responses and the same dysregulation in our nervous system and the same attachment wounds when we experience emotional abuse, just like physical abuse. So that's just something really important I want to emphasize again, because I get a lot of clients that say, well, I wasn't physically abused, so I don't understand why I'm so dysregulated. I don't understand why I'm struggling in relationships. I don't understand why I self-sabotage, or I'm so disassociated, or I don't trust myself. And we have to really look at and identify emotional abuse and neglect. And I want to say many of our parents and our caregivers didn't know better, didn't have resources, didn't have community support. We don't do enough in this country as a whole to support parents. I'm saying this as a parent myself who absolutely at times feels under-supported and under-resourced, with, groceries, childcare, etc. in this country. And I'm not making an excuse. And it's not for me to ever tell any of my clients that you have to forgive or you shouldn't forgive your parents or caregivers. I really believe that is an individual journey, and for each person to decide for themselves in your value system, in your own situation and scenario, if forgiveness is even like ideal for you and something you want to work towards or not. Some Healing Shame, which is a great account. Oh my goodness, thank you for naming the compassion to understand the lack of resources that helped me forgive my mom so much. Yeah, I mean, it's a systemic issue as well, right? And in all my work, we're always looking at our own individual experiences and what we went through, but also understanding oppressive systems in play that affected our development, affected the health of our families, affected our mental health, etc. Okay, so I talked about kind of overt emotional abuse, right? Being yelled at, being shamed, being called names, being teased, gaslighting. Gaslighting happens a lot in parenting. I think it's probably part of the more popular parenting dynamic, where, you know, we have like this real big power and authority gap between parents and kid, where our dominant parenting paradigm is very authoritarian, not authoritative, not partnering with our children, where yes, of course, like there's still a gap in power, but it's a lot more collaborative parenting. And so many of us, I know I did, heard things growing up like, I didn't say that, you didn't see that, you didn't hear that, that's not what happened. And we go through this experience of being gaslit as kids, and it really disconnects our like trust with our own intuition. If we think about the experience of gaslighting, and maybe you've experienced this with friends or in adult romantic relationships, I certainly did in my first marriage. It started like way before I started dating. It started in how I was parented and the current parenting paradigm. So if you're a parent, the very best thing you can do for your kids is like validate their direct experience, even if you don't understand it or agree with it, or you feel like they're over or underreacting to something. Like, validate their experience, like what they see, hear, feel, think, smell, validate it, you know, and that takes us taking personal responsibility and ownership, which takes a lot of emotional maturity. It's not easy to do, and regulation. So again, I work with a lot of parents too, and helping them to be more regulated so they can help grow children who have more regulated nervous systems and break cycles. So now I want to shift into more emotional neglect. And emotional neglect is where we're not getting enough of something. So we're not getting enough eye contact. We're not getting enough responsiveness. We're not getting enough attention, enough touch, enough time, enough consistency. When we don't get enough of these things, it affects something called our amygdala, or our brain's internal warning system. You may have heard of this, but our amygdala, when we experience like big traumas, like physical abuse, living in a high crime, unsafe area, experiencing an assault, over time, if we experience enough chronic stress and trauma, our amygdala, they actually say it gets a little bit bigger. And that is a survival adaptation, because if you are living in chronic lack of safety and chronic danger, then your brain does this brilliant thing of making your threat detector, and actually it's back here, your amygdala, even more sensitive to help you survive, because your brain is thinking, this is just going to be it for the rest of this person's life. So we're going to make your threat detector extra sensitive to help you navigate, because we don't know when or if this is ever going to resolve. And think about it, our ancestors lived entire lifetimes, entire generations through wars, through famine, through immigration or migration, where you could have had multiple generations that didn't experience safety. So it makes sense that their amygdalas got a little bigger so they could have sharper threat detectors. And we also know when we are in our healing journey, part of the work as we're working on regulating our nervous systems, learning how to create an internal sense of safety, how to ground and resource and regulate ourselves, we actually over time, as we show our nervous system that we're safe, as we anchor into safety throughout our day, we create safe relationships. That kind of overly sensitive, a little bit larger amygdala can actually shrink back to normal size. So we actually become less sensitive to threat and danger. We decrease how hypervigilant we are. We're able to relax more over time. Now, research also shows that you don't have to have experienced a lot of like big traumatic events to have this overly sensitive amygdala. That maternal neglect specifically, this is what's been researched, is when the mother figure doesn't give enough nurturing, enough attention, respond in a timely, consistent manner, doesn't use her own body like to hug or to soothe, but like just gives food or gives toys instead. That maternal neglect, when a child cries and the mother turns away from the child instead of towards the child, when a mother looks down at the child instead of getting down on the level of the child, that these things also cause the amygdala to become enlarged on the other hemisphere. I think it's the left hemisphere versus the right hemisphere, but it also creates the same dynamic of hypervigilance, of a heightened threat detection system. And then we see symptoms of CPTSD, dysregulated nervous system, attachment woundings, as a direct correlation, even things like addiction and borderline personality disorder, as a direct consequence of maternal emotional neglect. So I just wanted to come on today and give a little bit of education about emotional abuse, like verbal overt abuse, right? Yelling, shaming, name calling, teasing. But then there's also neglect, which is when we don't get enough of something that we need. Humans need touch, eye contact, connection. They need to, we as babies, we need to feel like our experience is being mirrored back into us. So when a baby smiles, the caregiver notices and smiles back. That helps us develop our sense of self. We need the experience of, as babies, of being attuned to. So a good attuned caregiver kind of knows what's a gassy cry and what's a tired cry and what's a, okay, I'm getting bored, I want to get out of here cry. And an attuned, emotionally available caregiver is able to respond consistently, reliably, appropriately, and they use their own body with hugs, with touch, with support to soothe the child. And when we don't get enough of this growing up, then that also impacts our brains and our nervous systems. Even if you didn't have a huge traumatic childhood, not having enough of this can still impact you. And again, a lot of our parents had to work. I was like a latchkey kid at a very young age, having to watch my little sister and brother after school and all summer long. I understand my parents had way worse trauma actually happen to them when they were kids than what I went through. So they even did better than their parents. I am doing better than they did. I'm not perfect, and I hope my kids, if they decide to become parents one day, are even better parents than I was, right? That's the whole thing with breaking generational cycles. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in one generation. It certainly doesn't happen in one lifetime. But when we understand that healing generational cycles, it's not just about putting food on the table and a roof over a head and not like hitting somebody. It is truly about doing this emotional work to emotionally provide the experience that our loved ones. And again, if you're not a parent, maybe you have nieces, nephews, nibblings, other kids that you're around who benefit from you having a more regulated, healthy nervous system, and from you having done the work to get your threat detector system, your amygdala, kind of shrunk back down to a normal size. So you're not feeling so sensitive, so easily overwhelmed, and so easily activated. And this is the work that we can do when we do trauma-informed work. So I explain it to people like, imagine your amygdala, your threat detection system. It's like that big red Staples button. Do you remember those commercials? It's like a Staples button that says easy. And when we first start in our healing journey, we might feel like a raw nerve, right? Like I started healing from trauma, stopped drinking at the same time, and I was just like crying all day, every day. I was a raw nerve for about 6 months. And I just felt like I had this giant red button on me, and like it was so easy to like push my buttons to trigger me. Like somebody looked at me the wrong way and it would just really activate me. And over time, I've gotten that button smaller and smaller and smaller. Or like, yes, you can still like push my button, but I'm not such an easy target to hit anymore. I'm not so easily activated or triggered as I used to be when I first started in my healing journey because of the nervous system regulation, because I've learned how to create safety within myself and create safe relationships in my life that have helped to heal those attachment wounds and continue to heal my nervous system. My marriage, my second marriage that I'm currently in, has been the most healing experience of my life. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people learn how to create safe, healthy relationships, because your primary relationships are going to be where your most powerful healing happens. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I don't think I saw any questions about this. I'm going to post this replay. I don't see anything. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that this served you. Again, I talked about childhood emotional abuse and neglect, how it impacts our brains and our nervous systems, just like physical abuse. And if your significant other isn't on board with healing themselves, that is okay. You do you. You do the work. All my clients come to work with me. 9 out of 10 of them that are partnered, their significant other is not doing the work and wanting to do the work. But what we can do is learn how to regulate our nervous system, learn how to heal our attachment wounds and start taking some new action in our relationship, communicate in healthier ways. And what all of this does is it creates more safety in the relationship. So I always tell my clients, like, we're going to do everything that you can do to work on yourself. Leave no stone unturned. And you're going to create this beautiful safe room. And I have them like imagine like just this beautiful safe room, that's like comfy. Maybe it's like a Moroccan lounge. Maybe it's like bohemian style. Maybe it's like a spa. Like just imagine like this beautiful, safe, like cozy or luxurious room, and imagine that your like job is to set that room up, and that's you again regulating your nervous system, healing your attachment wounds, implementing healthy communication strategies and tools. And so that's setting the room up, and then all you can do is like open the door and say like, okay, hey, I'm here. Like, and it is ultimately up to our partners if they want to step into the safe room or not. You only have control over 50% of your relationship, but 50% is still a lot. And you would be surprised. And I would say, I have to really do the math on this. I want to say 3 out of 4 cases when my clients do this work and they start being more regulated, less anxious, less stressed, communicating better, and really embodying the healing and walking the talk, their relationship changes and their partners start to change too in unexpected ways. And maybe 1 out of 4 clients their partners are just like, absolutely no fucking way, like I'm not down with this at all. And then that leads to having to make another decision around, are they going to stay? And if they're going to stay, how are they going to protect themselves and their energy and work with it? Or are they going to go, and what does that process look like? But us doing our work and our healing serves us in our lives always, always, always. All right, everybody. I will be back on live soon. This was fun. I loved connecting with you today. I'm standing up, so I'm feeling like the energy is better when I stand up. And we will talk soon. Okay,